Who are some of the people who've completely lied about themselves? Let's get going with number 5, identity crisis. In 2017, Victoria Waldrip, a Georgia teenager known online for her prank videos as Whoa Vicky, came under fire. She was claiming that despite her blonde hair and light skin, she is actually black. She said she took a DNA test to prove what she always believed about her heritage. Even though both of her parents present as white, Vicky claims her black heritage comes from her dad, who never knew he was actually mixed race. Since announcing her African American lineage, Whoa Vicky started posting pictures and videos online, adopting a new accent, using the N-word, wearing grills, do-rags, and bonnets. She also started twerking and fighting. This behavior earned her 600,000 Instagram followers. In one of her viral videos, Whoa Vicky admitted that her mother always told her that she's white, but she refused to believe it for whatever reason. She decided to use the day she received her DNA results, confirming her black identity, as her new birthday. She posted a makeup tutorial on YouTube for black women and promoted products encouraging brands to sponsor her. As if her story couldn't get more outlandish, Whoa Vicky also claimed she was pregnant with twins. When people confronted her about lying about her identity, Vicky responded by calling her followers racist. She posted a DNA test that said she was 45% black and 54% European, even though she initially said she was only 25% black. Vicky never came up with a good reason for the difference between her initial claims and the actual DNA results. Celebrities like Snoop Dogg and Plies shared her videos as funny entertainment, but many people didn't find her behavior to be a laughing matter. In 2018, a year after coming out as black, Vicky was arrested at a mall in Greensboro, North Carolina, for kicking a police officer. Mall security and police gave her several opportunities to leave the mall, but she refused. The man who was with Vicky started shouting, and another person yelled that there was an active shooter present. She was charged with trespassing, hitting a law enforcement officer, and resisting arrest. Vicky was listed as white on the police report, but claimed that police were being racist against her and even used the Black Lives Matter hashtag on an Instagram post explaining the incident. She posted a video of her arrest on Instagram, along with her mugshot and the hashtag FreeVicky. In 2023, Whoa Vicky still stirring up controversy online. She still wears cornrows and appropriates black culture. In one video, she praised Jeffrey Dahmer, and in another video, spoke negatively about the LGBTQ community. Vicky used her platform to try to enter the entertainment world, releasing songs called Cash App and In Da City, both rap and hip-hop tracks. She still has more than 3 million Instagram followers, and following the celebrity skincare trend, started her own skincare line called Whoa Skin. Another controversy from Whoa Vicky is perhaps her high-profile beef with Bad Baby, though Vicky said it was all just a joke to her. And really, that was a hard beef, because who are you going to side with, you know? Both of these young ladies are such beacons of light, it was nearly impossible to pick a side. It's like you have to choose between mom and dad or something. It was a horrible situation for us, so thank God it's over. Number 4, the cartel CEO. Marty Tibbetts was a Michigan millionaire and CEO of Clementine Live Answering Service, but the DEA said he wasn't as much of a CEO as he was someone that needed to be enforced by their agency. He used the alias Dale Johnson to fund a global cartel and design submarines to bypass authorities in Europe. Federal authorities exposed Tibbetts' double life after arresting his partner in crime, Lee Didani, who was wanted for things the DEA doesn't like, such as contraband, firearms, and narco submarines. The investigation revealed that Tibbetts' cartel spanned 3 continents and 15 countries. Authorities arrested Didani and searched his phone, in which they found pictures of him posing with guns and stacks of cash, because if you have both, you have to take pictures like that. It's the law. In addition to conversations with Tibbetts about fraudulent passport, contraband sales, and money laundering. Tibbetts also apparently worked with fellow cartels to create a parasitic narco submarine called the Torpedo, which would attach itself to the hull of a larger ship via a large magnet, which is admittedly super cool. The submarine could be manipulated by a remote control, and a fishing boat could approach the boat to retrieve the contraband and take them to shore. They built a submarine prototype in 2018, but the operation never came to fruition. Tibbets passed away when his vintage fighter jet crashed into a Wisconsin dairy farm in July 2018, incinerating 50 cows. Authorities arrested Didani 2 years later in North Carolina on charges of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances and money laundering. Tibbets began his partnership with Didani in 2015, giving him $1.8 million to fund his illegal activities. Over the years, Tibbets transferred millions more to Didani. They raised $12,000 in funding in crypto and an Albanian bank account to pay for development of the submarine, even though the manufacturer didn't know the sub's true purpose. When Tibbets passed away, so did his plans for the narco submarine. Didani could no longer find enough funding for his cartel and relied on a sponsor in the United Arab Emirates. But in 2020, authorities seized hundreds of kilograms of what we call nose beer in the Netherlands, leading to the ultimate downfall of his empire. Authorities looked through Didani's luggage and found controlled substances. When neighbors learned of Tibbets' side hustle as an international dealer, they were shocked. He founded the World Heritage Aviation Museum in Detroit and is survived by his wife and 2 children. His neighbors and friends called him a joy and a business visionary. And seriously, whatever happened to the torpedo sub? It sounds awesome. And we got a pool. Just saying. Number 3. Not your accent. Spaniard Hilaria Baldwin, a former model famous for being Alec Baldwin's wife and baby mama, had to eventually admit that her name isn't Hilaria, and she isn't from Spain. When someone called her out on the brewing conspiracy that she was impersonating a Spanish accent, Hilaria posted on Instagram and admitted her true identity. Her agency's website claimed that Hilaria was born in Mallorca, Spain, and was raised in Boston. She said she was raising her children with her native language, Spanish. Hilaria was known for using a pronounced Spanish accent in media appearances. On a TV cooking show, Hilaria even claimed to forget the English word for cucumber because she's just so Spanish. But Hilaria confused fans when her American accent came through on Instagram when responding to Amy Schumer, who called out Hilaria's suspiciously in-shape body after just giving birth. So there's yet another Hilaria Baldwin conspiracy theory. Internet investigators with more time than sense eventually uncovered that Hilaria's real name is Hillary Hayward Thomas, and she grew up in Massachusetts with no Spanish ancestry. Even though she's a confirmed alum of a high school in Weston, Massachusetts, Hilaria claimed that she moved to the U.S. from Spain when she was 19 to attend NYU. Her parents, though, do live in Mallorca and left the U.S. in 2011, so it's like she's practically from there. After the accusations about her fake identity came to light, Hilaria took to Instagram to clarify things. She said that she was born in Boston, but spent her childhood going between Spain and the U.S. She said she grew up bilingual and wanted her kids to be raised similarly. She also said she used the name Hilaria when she would visit Spain and the name Hillary when in the U.S. So, when she met and married Alec Baldwin and came into the limelight, she decided to just go by her Spanish name to make things easier. We're not sure what she means by that, though. Even though she was born and raised in Boston, Hilaria claims that her fluctuating Spanish accent represents the 2 cultures in which she grew up. She says that sometimes her accent changes depending on if she's been speaking more Spanish or English recently, and accidentally mixes the 2 languages when she's feeling flustered. Hilaria said she prides herself on being authentic and wants to claim both her Spanish and American identities. Honestly, we always thought the Boston accent was wicked cool, so it's a shame she casted aside to appropriate Spanish culture. Hey Hilaria, where's the bubla? Let's go to the Packy and get some tonic. Go pack the car. Number 2, Samantha who? Samantha Lindell Azzopardi is an international con woman who invented fake identities to swindle wealthy Australian families and government authorities through an au pair scam. An au pair is a live-in helper from a foreign country, kind of like a nanny or butler. We had to look that up for the record. Azzopardi conned Melbourne family Tom and Jazz Jervis into believing that she was an experienced au pair named Harper Hernandez. She claimed to be from a rich American family and was paid $6,500 in 6 months by working for the Jervis family. Azzopardi duped another Melbourne couple when she said she was an au pair named Saka. Azzopardi conned yet another family when she said she was a talent recruiter named Marley and took their child to Sydney. Foreign governments have also fallen victim to Azzopardi's scams. In 2013, she went to Dublin and claimed to be seeking refuge after being involved in human trafficking in Eastern Europe. The Irish government spent hundreds of thousands of dollars until her lies were exposed. She was then deported to Canada, where she started even more more lies. Back in Australia, she told a family in Perth that she was a Russian gymnast named Emily. Other people saw her in Sydney, claiming to be a schoolgirl half her age. In August 2022, Azzopardi told non-profit organization Jewish Care in Australia that she was a 14-year-old French survivor of human trafficking. She said she had arrived in Australia desperately seeking a foster family to take her in after fleeing her home country of France. When police questioned her, Azzopardi tried to run away, but eventually told police that an Australian couple had been taking care of her for the last 5 weeks. When police tried to find her, this foster family, she sent them to a slew of fake addresses. In French-twinged broken English, she then told authorities she was lost. Investigators found out that her foster family's names were completely made up, and any messages exchanged between them and Jewish Care were probably sent by Azzopardi herself. After a 9-hour interrogation and fingerprint analysis, police discovered that she was an international con artist who had used more than 40 fake identities. Azzopardi didn't appear in court, so her lawyer pleaded guilty on her behalf to making a false representation to police that she was the victim. She claims to be dealing with a variety of mental health issues, including borderline personality disorder. Azzopardi has also been diagnosed with pseudologia fantastica, a condition which presents itself as compulsive pathological lying. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay right here for our past release on this guy who was nicknamed The Voice because of his ability to impersonate powerful women in Hollywood. Number 1. Rachel Dolezal. In 2015, Rachel Dolezal, the famed president of the NAACP in Washington, was revealed to be faking the black identity she had been claiming. Her white parents came forward with her birth certificate and childhood photos of Dolezal with blonde hair and green eyes. They insisted that their lineage is purely European and there's no evidence of African heritage at all. When a reporter confronted Dolezal about her racial identity, she dodged the question and continued to do so whenever the news approached her. Dolezal has been transforming her appearance to look African American for 20 years. When Dolezal was a teenager, her family adopted 4 black kids and she became fascinated with their culture. She started using hair extensions and even tried to grow an afro. She changed her accent and in college created her undergraduate portfolio of African American art. This earned her a full ride to the historically black Howard University for a master's in fine arts. By the time Dolezal moved to Spokane, Washington with her young son Franklin, she perfected her look. She was elected president of the local NAACP and criticized America's white power structure. She said that her father was just her stepfather and posted a picture of herself hugging a black man on Facebook who she claimed was her real father. Dolezal said she has been a victim of several hate crimes over the years, such as receiving a bundle of racist letters and pictures in her mailbox. Police had investigated the letters and Dolezal had to deny planting them there herself, because she probably did. In 2020, Dolezal joined the platform Cameo, where she offered fans personalized video messages for $37 each, or they could message her for only $2.99. Some of her videos include birthday and congratulation messages. Almost 10 years after her true racial identity was revealed, Dolezal still insists she's black and has been unable to land a job because of her scandalous past. To make ends meet, besides selling videos on Cameo, Dolezal sells her art online. Unsurprisingly, most of her work is centered on race. She also sells her memoir in full color on her website. Dolezal continues to whine about not being able to get a job, including positions that don't require a degree, like being a maid at a hotel. Out of apparent desperation, she joined OnlyFans in 2020 and sold scandalous photos to anyone who paid for them. But in September 2021, several explicit photos of Dolezal were leaked on social media. Apparently, the series of photos were an ode to Rihanna's Savage X Fenty lingerie line. Fans can access her content for $9.99 a month. Dolezal also said she would start selling foot pictures and fitness tips. Dolezal promised new content 3 times per week. This isn't her only side hustle. Dolezal previously tried to sell homemade lollipops, melanin spectrum dolls, and a sculpture of an electric chair. Yeah. Imagine you're an aspiring screenwriter working on a project that just had its funding approved. You have the opportunity to travel to Indonesia to begin researching and gathering material for your script. Since you're in another country, you need to worry about your transportation, food expenses, and ensuring that you have a translator on site. You're still waiting for the funds for the project to be released, but you know that it'll happen, so you're not worried about using your own money to cover the expenses up front. You throw yourself into your work, but still spend time speaking speaking to Hollywood executives where nothing seems out of place until one day you find out that the whole thing was a hoax. This happened to Gregory Mandarano, a screenwriter from Long Island, New York. In the summer of 2015, he traveled to Indonesia 6 times to work on an upcoming project. But Mandarano would certainly not be this scam's first or last victim. Hargobind Tahirlamani is an Indonesian man who managed to scam multiple people by impersonating males and females. Hargobind grew up in Jakarta, Indonesia, where he grew up with an affluent lifestyle. His father was a film producer and wrote rom-com and dramatic movie scripts. It was when Hargobind's mother died that his life fell apart. And then his father's death led to tension with his siblings over the family inheritance. Soon, he was cast out from his family after he and his siblings fell out over property disputes. He attended school in Jakarta before he moved to the US to attend college. In 2000, he went by the alias of Harvey when he participated in the National Forensic Association competition in persuasive speaking. He placed in the quarterfinals, and this wouldn't be the first time that he would pretend to be Harvey. However, he was disqualified from a tournament after getting caught plagiarizing. Hargobind started calling various people involved with the tournament to air out his frustrations. However, rather than making calls as himself, he decided that he needed a more powerful name that would catch people's attention. This was when people involved in the tournament started receiving calls from Cate Blanchett, who claimed to be calling to represent him. Of course, it wasn't the Australian Academy Award-winning actress that people were speaking to. It was Hargobind. Hargobind's crimes date back to the early 2000s, starting when he was still a student. Public court records state that he and a few others were a part of a lawsuit over the misappropriation of school funds. The Hollywood Reporter also discovered that he was booked for falsifying checks in Las Vegas. The Hollywood Reporter also uncovered that he was arrested on embezzlement charges in his home country of Indonesia. It didn't take long for him to set his eyes on Hollywood, where he would commit most of his crimes. He used his knowledge of how the Hollywood industry worked to his advantage, aware that he could make people trust him if he pretended to be the right person. His ability to impersonate whoever he wanted made it easy for him to carry out some of his biggest cons. Not all of his crimes targeted celebrities. Dozens of the people he scammed were ordinary workers on sets, such as photographers, makeup artists, and stunt performers. He'd convince them to go to Indonesia, where he'd make big promises of work and high budgets to accommodate their stays. He asked the marks to pay for their own expenses, like transportation, hotels, and food, with the promise that they'd be reimbursed. What Hargobind would do is simply overcharge them for expenses. He'd be in charge of making sure his marks had what they needed. He simply acted as an overly expensive middleman. Many of them willingly did this, even if they were paying thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars in expenses. On top of his travel scam, Hargobind was also the host of the food-centric Instagram account Pure Bites. Although he never identified himself on the account, he managed to gain 50,000 followers. It used the tagline, "Every meal has a story," and he presented himself as someone who grew up in Indonesia and the US. The account had photos and videos of well-photographed meals from some of the fanciest restaurants in the United Kingdom. He'd mention his escapades exploring London's culinary scene and would use his platform to promote different restaurants. He sometimes rounded out the posts with mentions of his love life, his relationship with his parents, or the time he spent exploring London's culinary cuisine. Sometimes he told fans about struggling with potentially life-threatening illnesses such as pancreatic cancer. The Clerkenwell Boy, another faceless Instagram account, is an account that also documents restaurants in London and has 250,000 followers. One thing that Hargobind wanted more than anything was adulation. He was an opportunist and would fawn over anyone he met that he felt could help him raise his status. If he were talking to someone of high status, he would laugh too hard at their jokes or compliment them so much that it would make them uncomfortable. When he wasn't worshiping high-profile people he met, he was name-dropping other people he knew. He wanted to make it clear that he was well-connected in the London restaurant scene. Paul Hansen is a highly regarded photographer in the industry. He was contacted one day in 2018 by a man named Gavin Ambani. Ambani wanted pictures for his Instagram account and felt that Hansen would be the perfect person to take them. Ambani was Hargobind's new alias and the one that he would use to promote his Instagram account. But Ambani wouldn't accept no for an answer. He name-dropped Seret Packer and Itamar Surlovich, the chef owners of Honey & Company, a popular Middle Eastern restaurant in London. While he claimed to have a close relationship with Packer and Surlovich, the couple only knew him as a customer at one of their restaurants. Ambani spoke to Surlovich one day about Karam Sethi, one of the people behind the Michelin-starred Gymkhana restaurant in Mayfair. When Surlovich spoke about his admiration for Sethi's work, Ambani offered to introduce them to one another. However, However, Sethi knew of Ambani for the wrong reasons. Ambani had gone to Sethi's restaurant, Trishna, 4 or 5 times. While Sethi saw him when he was there, he thought Ambani was just an ordinary customer. But then, after feeling disgruntled about how the staff treated him at the restaurant, Ambani sent a slew of emails complaining about the service at the restaurant, so much so that he caught Sethi's attention. According to Ambani, a staff member wasn't giving him the attention that he felt he deserved when he was there. He was heated and threatened to call Michelin and his attorneys. Said he personally called Ambani to smooth things over, and that's when Ambani's demeanor completely changed. Rather than continuing with his threats, he expressed admiration for the chef, as if he was Sethi's superfan. Since Ambani knew some of his friends, he agreed to get a coffee with Ambani to discuss the project. Ambani told him that he grew up in India and was born into a wealthy family. He said he worked for Netflix in the UK and claimed his goal was to become a key influencer in the food world. Ambani planned to develop a gastronomy channel by developing the TV side of Instagram. Ambani called upon his restaurant friends for the locations of the 2 shoots. The first was at Zoo Tea House in Chinatown. The second shoot was done at Honey and Smoke, owned by Packer and Srolovich. In one shot, Ambani sat while several servers poured teapots with rainbow colors out in front of him to represent that Ambani was gay. At Honey and Smoke, he broke bread with Packer and Srolovich, which was supposed to be a symbol for breaking the social barriers with their Israeli Middle Eastern cooking. He went as far as to say that he stood for breaking down barriers. The shoots were successful, and the photographs were in Hansen's signature dramatic yet intimate style. Then came time for the payment, which was over £4,000. Ambani claimed that there was a technical issue and that he had to transfer money from his aunt's American bank account, which was where his money was tied up. Of course, he promised he would get Hansen the money soon. Hansen found Ambani odd, but wasn't worried about getting his money. After all, why would a fraudster show his face so much and even document his scam through public photographs? However, some time passed, and Hansen still wasn't paid. Ambani's excuses became more implausible, such as when he said he would physically deliver the money one day but then didn't show up. Other times they spoke about the money, Ambani asked for more time. Eventually, Hansen asked Srolovich to check Ambani's bank statement as he was growing suspicious over whether Ambani was who he said he was. Ambani found out about this and was furious with Hansen. He accused Hansen of defamation, a criminal act, for contacting Srolovich. He also said that Hansen telling Srolovich about the weird situation with the money made him really upset. Hansen was never paid. Hansen's photographs were still used on the Pure Bites Instagram account, but Pure Bites eventually removed them after receiving repeated reminders that he never paid for the work. Hargobein's next scam would be set up around him impersonating multiple executives that worked for the China Film Group, a mainland China film company that had handled several large productions. One of his victims from his China Film Group days was Gregory Mandarano. He was from Long Island, New York. As an aspiring screenwriter, he jumped at the opportunity to travel to Indonesia for an upcoming project. In the summer of 2015, he went with his writing partner to Indonesia 6 times to pursue the project. Their issue was the finances for the project. They believed the money was approved. It just had to be released. In the meantime, they would have to cover expenses themselves, understanding that they would be reimbursed when the money became available. Covering expenses for themselves was getting expensive, but they knew they had to do it while they waited for the rest of the financing. A producer for China Film Group named Anand Sippy met with the pair regularly while they were in the country. Mandarano was also in touch with many executives at China Film Group, all reassuring him that they would get their money soon. However, Mandarano was not speaking to multiple high-powered executives in the film industry as he thought. In fact, he would soon learn that he was only talking to one person the entire time. And Anand Sippy, who'd served as one of the only people they'd met in person from the China Film Group, was the mastermind behind a huge scam. He had to fund his own expenses during his 6 trips to the country. By the time he found out about the truth, he'd wasted $70,000 of his own money to cover the trips. Hargobein had many aliases. Throughout his time as a fraudster, he developed multiple personas that were male and female. All of the evidence gathered over the years makes it clear that aliases such as Gavin Ambani, Lal Gobind, and so many others were all just Hargobind. Of course, then there are the famous people he impersonated, starting back when he pretended to be Kate Blanchett. Henry Wu, a photographer, was delighted when he was contacted by Wendy Dang Murdoch, who was once married to the media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Wendy reached out to him and his partner Zori Shanchenka about taking on an assignment abroad for an exhibition that was part of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. Hargobind began impersonating Wendy to lure Henry and Zori to Indonesia. The San Francisco-based pair are co-editors of the photography site This Life of Travel. They were flattered that Wendy reached out to them and probably hoped that it would be the start of an ongoing professional relationship. Wendy complimented them on their photography, saying it was exactly what she wanted. The project was to photograph Chinese immigrant communities in Southeast Asia and to portray the Chinese essence that these communities represented. To make the story more plausible, Hargobind added Aaron, Wendy's assistant. Henry received a call from a man named Aaron, who was supposedly Wendy Murdoch's assistant. He wanted to talk to the pair about the details of the project. After speaking for a minute with a thick New Yorker accent, he said he'd connect them with Wendy. There was a momentary pause, and then they were on the phone with her. Her accent was unique, with Asian, British, and American influences mixed together. Even though they spoke to Wendy, or at least who they thought was Wendy, the pair were becoming a little bit suspicious, and one of their anxieties was that her listed lawyer didn't seem to exist. While they were concerned, it didn't stop them from signing their contract and making plans for their trip to Indonesia. Their job was to photograph people in several cities around the country, including Jakarta. And then they were told that they would have to pay the initial costs of their airfares and other expenses, but that they would be reimbursed for everything when they were paid for the project. It was risky and meant that they had to pay thousands of dollars of their own money. They still hadn't met Wendy or Aaron in person, but this was an excellent opportunity, and they trusted that Wendy would reimburse them at the end of the project. A high-profile connection like Wendy made it worth it for them, but their excitement turned to concern when they arrived in Jakarta. Aaron called them right as they landed to tell them they'd be responsible for even more costs than they realized. Even though they were promised they'd be reimbursed, they still had to pay fees like a $1,500 photography permit that they were asked by Aaron to make payable to the driver who picked them up. The next day, they received a call from a furious Wendy, who accused the pair of racism after taking photographs of the driver. She claimed they were unauthorized and even threatened to cancel the entire project. Panicked, they promised to fix the misunderstanding. Wendy informed them that they'd have to pay for another photography permit, as the one they bought the previous day was suddenly invalid. This was when it became clear to the pair that something wasn't right, and they were confident it was some sort of scam. Many other people, like Henry, trusted Hargobind because he impersonated well-known people. The list of people that Hargobind likely impersonated is long. He imitated Megan Ellison, a film producer, Barbara Booth, Ellison's mother, and Amy Pascal. Authorities also believe that he pretended to be Star Wars producer Kathleen Kennedy, and ex-Paramount executive Shelley Lansing, and former Sony movie chief Amy Pascal. Hargobind's scams followed a similar pattern. He would offer Hollywood workers, like photographers, makeup artists, and stunt performers, a job in Indonesia. Working with people in Hollywood that were determined to bring their dreams to life made it much easier for Hargobind. Many workers are desperate for the opportunity to find their big breaks, and his scam offered them a path to the success they sought. He kept in constant contact with them as they flew to Indonesia. He would give them projects such as creating mood boards for photo shoots, enacting sides of dialogue that he sent them, or even auditions on the phone. They always thought they were close to meeting the movie's director or producer, but there were always excuses as to why the shoot was delayed. Every day that they waited to work on these movies was a day where they were forced to fork out even more of their own money. They had to pay for photo permits, driving fees, food, and whatever other expenses came up that day. Hargobind didn't do all this work in Indonesia alone, and it's believed that he had two accomplices that collected the money. While his execution was elaborate, at its core, he was committing advance fee fraud. Essentially, his victims were promised that they would receive their reimbursements once the movie funding was released, something that would never happen. Typically, he would pretend to be a male assistant and then have them hold to talk to people like Amy Pascal, which was an elaborate way of making them think that they were about to speak to a different person. Hargobind would pretend to be the assistant and the executive all on the same call. The executives that Hargobind was impersonating didn't know it was happening until victims started calling their offices. They wanted reimbursements for the trips and costs they incurred while in Indonesia, but the executives had no idea what they were talking about. Some of the impersonated executives hired a private security firm as they searched for answers as to why they were being accused of not paying workers. Then, in 2016 and 2019, the FBI opened its own investigation. Hargobind was arrested in Manchester, England in November 2020 at a hotel. At the time, he claimed that he was a writer for Netflix. He's additionally wanted on charges of aggravated identity theft, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and wire fraud in the US. A UK district judge will decide in November 2022 whether or not Hargobind will be handed over to the US authorities. Some of the factors that will be considered during the trial are the amount of scams he carried out in the UK and the amount of time that has passed since the crimes occurred. Even if the extradition request is granted, it'll likely take years for Hargabian to go on trial. Authorities believe that he's convinced more people to send him money even while in jail as he's awaiting for his court date. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you think is faker, Rachel Dolezal or Whoa Vicky.